Okay. So welcome from all these various places in the world that you've just joined. And for some of us, it's morning. For some of us, it's evening. And for all of us, it's now. So see if you can allow yourself to breathe into that sense of now. What kind of a relationship do you have with now? It might be a strange thing to say, and yet we have a relationship with our past, and we have a relationship with our future. And yet, do we have a relationship with now? But we're always in this time space called now. And yet we may not be aware that that is so. We may not have a relationship with now. So I'm inviting just a very brief exploration of what your part's relationship is with now. And this is what I really love about Zoom. This is what I love about technology, is that it unites people from all over the world who appear to be at different time zones, different locations, and yet we're all here now. And so where is here? See if you can define here for yourself. What's the definition of here? And for some parts of us, here might be a location in the body or in the mind, specifically in the head. For some of the parts, here is the space that you're in, where your physical body is located in right now. And for different parts, especially those that are very tuned into non-dual teachings, here is with self. Doesn't necessarily need to be attached to a body or a physical location, though it can be. But just notice where self is for you now. In this moment, in this here, in this now. And notice how in this here and now, this is where your breath is falling into this. So the breath is unfolding within this dimensionless, timeless space. So we're all present here, and this is unfolding now. See if you can use any pauses in this meditation as a timeless space within which you can experience being. You may have already switched off. Parts may have already gone off on their own unique journey. Or there may be parts that are listening out for the next bit of instruction. Notice how you can oscillate, pendulate, move between these different parts that are present here. Some that are already journeying through the inner realm. Some that are tuning into the sound of this voice. Some that are fleeting between past, future. Notice all of the so-called looking back or looking forward occurs now in this timeless, dimensionless space. And this timeless, dimensionless, transpersonal essence of us is what we can refer to as self as a wave. It's wordless, formless. Imagine catching a wave of light in your hand. How would we do that? How would we catch something that has no form? The self as a wave is the space within all manifests, including this voice, including the body from within which this voice emanates, including the ears with which you're receiving this voice. They're all manifestations of dimensionless, timeless, ever-present space or primal essence. And so this is self as a wave. Just see if you can let your parts tune into this essence, like an old-fashioned radio dial. With parts as different radio stations. And imagine scrolling through, tuning in, noticing all the parts that are present here. And then the space within which all of those frequencies, even the hardware of the radio, the casing, the box, all of that exists within the space of self. And just as there's biomimicry that happens, it's very evident when we look at the structure of the tree and the tree branches, when we look at the mycelial network beneath our feet, and then we look inside our bodies, the structure of the retinal vessels, the structure of the lungs, the pattern of the iris of our eyes is mimicking everything else in nature, in the universe. And this mimicry occurs in the world of form. So now imagine if self as a wave, this spacious, dimensionless, timeless, formless essence full of potential, manifests as a particle. As it does so, it mimics or it attains or it wants to translate what the qualities of this formless space might be. And this is where we arrive at self as a particle with the wonderful 8 C's. There's some aspect of transforming, retransforming, shape-shifting, adapting, switching, manifesting, receding back. There's a perpetual undulation, a give and take. No resistance. Self as a wave allows everything to manifest. Absolutely anything you can think of unfolds both within the space of self and is welcomed by self. And in the world of form, when we talk about evolution, the species that are the most successful are the ones who adapt. Adapting means letting go of what we thought something might be like and going along with the flow. Just like water, it will always find the most direct, easeful path that allows it to continue to flow. And this is why we say you never cross the same river twice. And on some level, we never cross the same part twice. By the time we revisit any part, it's already changed a little bit. It's already learnt something new. Or even the frozenness. Even the frozenness has some movement in it. Even parts that are stuck are very slowly, imperceptibly moving and shifting. Imagine in the height of winter, imagine setting out a bowl of water and sitting there, watching it the entire time until it freezes, until it becomes ice. For a very long time, it would just look like it's not doing anything. It just looks like water for hours on end. But if we were to zoom in and look a little bit closer, you would start to see little ice particles forming. It is moving, perhaps not perceptibly to the eye, but it is moving and shifting, transitioning. So even the most static parts of us cannot help but to be affected by the flow, the constant flow. And this might be really hopeful for some of our parts that feel they're so stuck and frozen. And yet, microscopically, there is always a flow, no matter how little. And what is that flow that animates these parts? It is, of course, self energy. Sometimes it trickles through in very small, slow movement through different parts. Sometimes it floods in. Self-energy floods in so much that we feel ecstatic in that moment, blissful, fulfilled, happy, joyful, and all the other 8 C's. Confident, creative, courageous, compassionate, clear, curious, connected, and calm. So the message of hope for any part that feels too stuck, too frozen, too unmovable, too far away from self. Let it know. Let self, let it know that self energy is moving through just at the right pace for this part. The invitation here is for these parts to trust self, that the energy of self is moving through them at just exactly the right amount for the here and now. Or for how much the part is able to expand and allow self to flow through. Self does not impose itself. It doesn't flaunt its joy or bliss around. Doesn't lord it over parts. It simply allows, welcomes, witnesses. Without any force. This is all effortless. Effortless flow. And there's a very subtle discernment here regarding being in self or self-led. We're always in self. The parts are always within or emanating from self. But they're not always self-led. Very subtle difference, but an important one. Imagine a blank sheet of A4 paper. Whatever color you like. You probably thought of white. And imagine that this blank sheet of paper represents self. Now, if you draw circles on that sheet of paper to represent parts, those parts are within self. In order for parts to allow themselves to be self-led, we need to build trust, relationship, and an embodied knowing that first and foremost, they already are within self. And if you imagine joining up all the circles that you've drawn, we now have collective parts working as one cohesive family. And now if these parts fully accept and understand and feel themselves to be within self, with enough trust, the natural consequence of this is to become self-led. And this is where we embody and live out, and others see in us relationally the 8 C's. It's a very noticeable shift when we step into self, or when we allow the parts to be self-led. People notice something shifts within you. And as the law goes, as within, so without, the inner shift affects the outer. So being in self doesn't require any effort from the part. They just naturally are within self, just as the clouds appear within the sky. There's no effort. The effort is in building the relationship from self to part. And that's the relationship is the thing that will allow part to be led by self. And this can only happen with trust. And sometimes in the IFS circles, it can be common to say, are you in self? And the natural answer is yes, of course, I'm in self. It's a little bit like asking, are you now in a room? Yes, of course, you're in a room, or wherever you are. Are you in a forest? Are you in a meadow? Wherever you happen to find yourself on this morning or afternoon or evening. A more skillful, a more nuanced question is, are you self-led? To be in self only requires self as a wave. To be self-led requires self as a particle, the both and here. Self-led means that we're showing up in this world with and as the qualities of self, the 8 C's and the 5 P's and however many others there are that feel authentic to you. So to be in self doesn't require any effort, and it is here and now, ever present, unchanging. To be self-led is to be adaptable, to have emotional flexibility, to have secure attachment to self in order to navigate life skillfully with the embodied knowing of the past, and skillful planning for the future. This is how we can really navigate this both and. Viewed from one side, it's unchanging. Ever present, timeless, dimensionless. Viewed from the other side, and we see the multiplicity and the diversity. And some parts very easily get on board with this. Like fish in water. Swimming effortlessly. Like clouds in the sky. Appearing, disappearing, reappearing. In other parts, it takes a longer time. It takes many instances of now in order for the ice to melt enough. For for the frozenness, the stuckness to shift enough in order to begin to get a sense of this flow. To move into trust and connection, co-creation with self, led by self. And really allowing the parts that feel so far removed from self, really allowing them to absorb this message that they are not alone. And that although it may appear that they've been stuck or frozen for a very long time, there are minute shifts happening all the time. The force that animates the stars, the moons, and the planets animates the parts. It would be impossible for these parts to be frozen, unchanging, unmoving. It's constant, permanent flow, albeit slow, very slow. Tiny baby steps, tiny shifts. But shifts nonetheless. And notice how your inner world is in this moment, in this here and now. Allowing the breath to become more conscious for you now, more obvious, more present. And signaling to your parts that we'll soon transition into our space of sharing. If you can become aware of the body sat on the surface that you're on, becoming aware of any sounds in the room, and opening your eyes if that feels right, and noticing the detail of your room that you're sat in. And allowing yourself to stretch, yawn. Thank you.